Rough. Good. Hello, my name is Chris Thorne, and welcome back to my mini-series on making flexible work. Now, I'm an executive and career coach, and my mission is to help people to love what they do at work. So whether that's finding your dream career, or if you're an organization, helping you to create a culture where people want to work. Now, I believe one of the fundamental things that we need to do in order to realize that is to help people to think better so they can feel better, because then they can achieve more through more positive actions and results. Now, I love people who are making a big positive difference, especially around the area of flexible working. So I am so thrilled today to be interviewing Ursula Tavendar, who is founder of Unbelievable, Taking Care of Business, and head of content for the Flexpo events. Welcome, Ursula.
Hi, Chris. Thanks so much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
I've been hearing so many things about you from my other interview guests. I've interviewed Madeline Cole, Shani Hamilton, Paul Holbrook, and everyone's like, oh, Ursula, you must speak to Ursula. So I'm really, really excited for this interview. So thank you again. Now,
no pressure.
So who is Ursula? Now, Ursula is another flexible working warrior. So after a successful career in corporate communications, she found herself in a position of needing to find a more flexible working situation to balance her home life. And there just wasn't any out there. So I'll let Ursula tell her story, but I'm sure a lot of you will relate to being in a similar position of perhaps progressing in your career to a certain point, and then your family situation changes and you need a more flexible way of working, but you can't find one that's going to keep you at a similar level to where you were. So Ursula, how did you get to where you are today?
That is a big question. It's difficult to know where to start, but I feel like what's jumping to mind is to tell you first about my the reason for doing what I do, and that is because I believe that everybody deserves equal choice and access to work opportunities. And the reason I've kind of come to that realization is partly through having a family, but also through to a number of other circumstances. So first one that jumps to mind is when I was kind of in my late 20s and my career was on the way up. You know, I was doing really well. I was being promoted what felt like left, right and centre, and I was part of a really, really incredible team. I was also battling a really debilitating eating disorder. And I found myself at the point where I had sworn when it started to affect my work, I would seek help. And I was really lucky at the time to work with the most extraordinary boss who made it safe for me to have a conversation with her and talk to her about what I was experiencing, because I'd got really good at putting the mask on and covering up what was really going on. And
oh gosh, yeah,
there was a work me and
the private you, yeah,
the private me that felt a bit. So I spoke to her, and she showed me probably one of the biggest acts of compassion another human has ever showed me, and I thought she would sign me off because I was ill.
Okay.
But she didn't. She, we were very lucky to have private healthcare. So she said, use that and get the help that you need before it gets to the point that you need to be hospitalized. And that's the way it was going.
Yeah.
And work around your hospital appointments as an outpatient. So I worked flexibly for a really long time alongside my recovery and getting my recovery established. And what she saw, which I didn't really know at the time, was that if you took my work away from me, I would suffer even more. So I think that what she recognized was that, being off sick and removing my work would have an even worse effect on my mental health, which was already very precarious, clearly. So that was the first exposure that I had to what I don't think it's melodramatic to say that life-saving potential power of flexible working. And I believe that had a really, really positive effect on my ability to establish my recovery.
Right.
And then, so after that, unfortunately, it became kind of a bit untenable for me to stay with that business. As loyal as I was to, I would have bled for that company. They were incredible. But life circumstances changed, and it became right for me to leave, as I'd fought very hard to establish my recovery, and we wanted to start a family. And I didn't feel that it would be possible at that time for me to kind of combine the two things. So I left voluntarily and began to freelance as kind of, PR and comms support for businesses, outsource, that kind of thing. And we had our first child, and I had this huge identity crisis where I was like, oh my God, how on earth am I going to combine being a
mom and having a career. Yeah.
I want to be here for my family. I fought really hard to have this child, and he was
Yeah.
a miracle, and I wanted to be there for him. And so that was the beginning, really, of Mumblievable, which began as a blog, and as a communications professional, it became, obvious that I needed to sort of write about my experiences.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to me that thousands of people felt the same, and they kind of the response was quite extraordinary. So I began to think about how I could start a business that would, aim to support people who'd found themselves in the same position as me. Which I did. So in the beginning stages, it was very much about supporting mums, because that was the audience that I was cultivating, and helping them to achieve some semblance of a healthy integration of their work and life. And I'm very conscious not to use the word balance, because, as I've said to you before, Chris,
I don't think there's any such thing, is there? It's
no, I don't know anyone
it all
that's
fits
achieved
together,
it.
doesn't it? Yeah.
I don't know anyone that's achieved it.
No.
It's a constant ebb and flow of everything, isn't it? Sometimes your work life demands more, and sometimes your home life demands more, and the two things, they integrate. So I think it's a much more appropriate term for me. And it just felt like I was having hundreds and hundreds of the same conversation with people about, why they couldn't make it work and what the problems were. And it just dawned on me that actually the better use of my time and commitment to helping this demographic of people and others, because it had expanded to sort of incorporate carers and people that had taken leave for research reasons or sabbaticals, people taking care of elderly relatives, people with chronic illnesses or disabilities. And I thought, right, okay, I need to change the system. I need to stop working with these brilliant individuals who are all experiencing in different ways the repercussions of systemic failures. And so at that point, I switched the focus of the business to become a consultancy, and with the aim of helping organisations to change so that the impact wouldn't be felt by those individuals. And alongside that, there was another kind of motivator at the time. So my husband became very unwell, and needed a kidney transplant, which he had in 2015. And his
life-changing.
It really was. And his recovery was very complicated. And so after a while I said to him, what if I look for a job? Because we both run our own businesses, and I wanted to do something tangible to support him to be able to take more time off. And I couldn't find a single thing that wouldn't mean that, would mean that I could go in at the right appropriate level for not only my skills and abilities and experience, but also would enable me to achieve the financial compensation that I would need to support my family. But that would, lead me to go to London 5 days a week and kiss my son goodbye on a Sunday night and not see him till the following Saturday morning. And for us, that was a stretch too far. That was a compromise too far. We'd almost lost my husband, and all of a sudden I'm going to say goodbye to you for 5 days a week. That's not going to work.
No. And also it's being able to work at a level and doing the sort of work that you already love doing as well. Is it? Why should you sort of have to take a step backwards or sort of down or sideways just because you need a different way of working?
It just isn't right. And I got really angry about it, and it made me kind of realize that actually so many demographics of people are effectively shut out of the workforce, or are forced into self-employment, or they're forced into roles, as we know, that are not reflective of their skills and experience and capabilities and potential, simply because they have a trade-off. They get the flexibility that they need to work, and to manage whatever their circumstances are in their home lives, and it just doesn't have to be that way. And I think because I'd been part of some fantastic change programs in my previous career, I also saw the benefit of communication and the role of communication in organisations being able to embrace flexibility. And because I'd already been kind of informally consulting with a lot of the organisations that I'd been working with anyway, I knew what they were doing. They were asking me informally about what best practice looked like and what other companies were doing. So I'd learned so much in a short space of time, and it made perfect sense actually to combine the sort of fire in my belly that I felt with my more recent experience and all the learning that I was doing and with my previous career. So I sort of elbowed my way into a few government groups and wanted to get involved at a kind of legal and policy level, be part of that conversation, and start building relationships with organisations of all sizes and types, because I just believe that everybody, as I say, deserves to be able to work in a way that works for them, and organizations benefit as well.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, what challenges have you sort of found that you've had to overcome in terms of getting organizations to start to make this shift? Because this, I mean, we are talking a bit of a paradigm shift for some people, aren't they? Because we have such entrenched ways of working the whole sort of 9 to 5 idea.
Definitely. Well, I think the first sort of personal challenge was that I didn't have a network of people throwing work at me. So I had to kind of build relationships from the ground up with businesses, and then, just kind of seek every opportunity I could to just have those conversations and to, reach out proactively to find out where the opportunities were to make a difference. And I think one of the main things is that it's not that organizations aren't willing to invest. I think it's that potentially because this is a growing, it's a very niche thing, isn't it? It's a very niche area. And I think perhaps because there isn't a traditional way of investing in, particularly in middle managers, but also in opening up the conversation, because to me it's all about the conversation around flexible working, because I speak to so many people who feel safe enough to have that conversation. So there's a cultural piece as well, where people don't have that safe environment to be able to be open about what they want, what they need, and unless you have an organization where there's very, very clear messaging that is led from the very top of the business, if you don't have that, that's the biggest challenge, I would say.
So when you go in to work with an organization, is it safe to say that really, you sort of need to start at the top, don't you? Because it trickles down. And if you don't have the buy-in of the senior management, it's pretty hard to kind of get a good proposition going to make flexible working work, isn't it?
It is. And I've worked with a number of organizations to build that business case upwards, to position this as something we have to do as a business, with HR directors or with operations directors, and being involved in kind of building a picture of what that could look like for their organization, what potential cost is of them not doing it, and looking at what other similar businesses are doing and how we could potentially replicate something like that within our business, to really engage also in a conversation with those leaders who are resistant about what is at the heart of their resistance, and tailor that to those objections, really. So I think that would be something that I would recommend doing, because it has been really successful, in terms of understanding what the real barriers are to it from a leadership level, and they're massive. There's such a spectrum of reasons, and it's all affected by people's people that people have worked with. It's affected by what people's parents did, all our conditioning, all of our experience. We're a product of our experiences, aren't we? So
yeah, absolutely.
It really varies, but I think engage in a conversation with those leaders about what it is that makes them think that this is not a good idea potentially, and how could we work together to trial something on a small scale, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, what are the most common themes that you tend to see in terms of this resistance? Are there like a few of them? Are there loads of them? I mean, what's
There's loads, but they all come back to fear.
Yeah, and trust, I think, is a big one, isn't it? Or are they're kind of interrelated, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, trust is a huge one. Communication is another really big barrier, because I think some leaders are concerned that their managers won't be able to manage people working in different ways, and that's been very interesting to observe over the last few months, because there is still a very high level of panic around, well, this is a temporary situation, but what do we do when people want this permanently, and we have to manage people working in the office and then some are working remotely, and how do we manage that? And again, it all comes back to fear. So trust is a big issue. Is communication. I think overwork is the opposite problem of what people actually think will happen. So there's fear that, and again, it comes down to trust, that people won't be able to be trusted to work flexibly. So whether that's remotely or flexibly in other ways, they will somehow abuse that trust and not deliver. And ultimately, I guess, from a leadership perspective, it is about ensuring that the outcomes for the business are
met.
Yeah, they need to be. They need to be, and so there is a fear that won't happen if you open this piece of opportunity for people to engage in a conversation about what that would look like for them if they could work differently. I think in my experience, none of those fears actually come to fruition. So what you need is a really brave leader who is prepared to trial different things, and actually that's kind of been done for us, hasn't it, in the last few months.
I was going to say, I think we've got the world's biggest business case really to prove that we can make flexible working work, and we can do it remotely as well. And yeah, I'm curious because I've been speaking to a few people in terms of leadership and, what's behind all this, and, fear and trust. And as you say, a lot of it comes down to those attitudes. I think some of it as well comes down to being brave enough to actually give your people a voice and actually listen to what it is that they actually need, because you might find that they don't necessarily all want to work 100% from home. Maybe they want a bit of a hybrid. They want to be in the office a few days a week, or they want to just stagger their hours, or that flexible working can mean so many things to so many different people. And it's being willing to actually listen to your people and manage that. I mean, that's the role of a manager, isn't it, really? So I mean, when you go into these organizations, I'm curious because I keep hearing Madeline mentioned something that you do called the team charter. What is that all about?
I'll talk to you about the team charter in just a moment. I think because it's worth going back to what you said just a moment ago.
Okay.
Because I feel like it's absolutely imperative for every business, no matter what size, give their people a voice. It doesn't make any sense to me that you wouldn't. And I don't mean to be controversial. I just
please do.
The way I feel, and I feel really strongly about it because I feel that everybody deserves equal footing in a business. Yeah. I think everybody deserves an equal voice in a business. And if you are to be expected to deliver your best work, whether you are a CEO or whether you are somebody on the front line in a very junior position, you have ideas, and you have you deserve autonomy. And autonomy breeds trust, right? So when people are given autonomy to deliver in the best way that they feel works for them and works for the business, and to make those decisions, most of the time there will only be a very, very small minority of people who will not deliver on that. Yeah. And that breeds trust. So it overcomes some of the obstacles with making flexible working really work. So giving people a voice is the very, very minimum that you should be doing as a business, and I feel very strongly about that. So I'm not going to be apologetic about that.
No, I'm completely in agreement with you, and I genuinely do feel that people rise to your level of expectations. And most people, they really do want to deliver they do want to do a good job. They do want to deliver, and I think as long as they feel that their contribution is being valued and recognizing that their needs are being met as well, and also that they that they know that they're part of something bigger. I think a lot of companies miss a trick because they don't spend a lot of time defining, what is actually the purpose of the business? How are you, what are you doing that is adding value to the world? Because people want to be a part of that. And if they feel that they are a part of that, they'll bend over backwards to give you the best of what they have.
100%. And this is where the team charter came from. Was I wanted to cultivate a tangible opportunity for people to contribute to a discussion around what flexible working could look like within the wider organisation and within their team. So the team charter came from my observations of a number of challenges that organisations are facing with making flexible working work. One of those is how we're going to manage it. Two is how do we build trust? How do we communicate better? And how do we define what is possible in relation to options for flexible working? Because that looks different for every function and every role. So what I was finding was that in businesses that I was working with, where there was a company-wide approach to flexible working, and there was this kind of blanket policy or guiding principles, or however they decided to approach it, there were always pockets they had a huge problem with inconsistency, because there were always pockets of the business where it was working over there but it's not working here, because we happen to be lucky enough to have a manager who understands and wants to make it work, whereas don't. So it was creating resentment, and that is such a cancer within an organization, I think. So I wanted to find a solution that could address all of those challenges and many, many more, would also give people a voice, and would also prove beyond all the evidence is there every single time you do this exercise with any team of any size. As you said, Chris, everybody wants something different. And so one of the biggest fears about flexible working is that, well, everybody will want to work from home permanently.
It's going to work. It's going to open the floodgates.
Yeah. And or will be nobody in the office ever again, or these people, our customers need our people to be around between this time and this time. So what if you don't want to work at that time? Flexible working means something different to absolutely everybody. there are people, I've been really interested to see the outcomes of engagement surveys. Lots of research that's been happening in the last 2 to 3 months after, we've gone through this initial lockdown phase over the summer, where overwhelmingly organisations are finding, and research organisations are finding, there's a small pocket of people that want to work remotely permanently, for whatever reason. There's a small pocket of people at the other end who want to be in the office permanently, but overwhelmingly, generally it's between 60 to 80% of people want to achieve a blend of option for flexible working, and that could mean location flexibility, it could mean flexing their hours. It sometimes, by in an old world where we used to commute all the time, it could mean something as little as 15 minutes, flexing start and finish times by very, very short amounts of time, so that you can walk the dog in the morning or go for a run or whatever it is,
or drop your kids off at school, or fit in some exercise.
Exactly. Just have a little bit more time. Some people just want to read, or they want to meditate, or they just want a bit more sleep. It doesn't matter what it is, but for some people it's a very small adjustment. It's not always a radical change, and I think that when you give people the opportunity to feed into that process and stipulate what it is actually that would make a big difference to them, it's very, very rarely a major change. So the team charter exercise helps bring that to life and show the proof that it isn't actually a radical change in our delivery. It's about doing it in the best way. And so what happens is we start with like a stakeholder engagement. So we get everybody on board, and I'm kind of into the how and the process now, if that's all right. Can I move on to that?
Yes, absolutely,
definitely.
I'm sure that's what
natural.
I think it's probably a natural question. People are thinking, okay, this all sounds great, I'm on board, but how do I do it? You're always going to get the how. So yes, please share that. Yes.
But basically, it's an agreement between a team. How is flexible working going to work within our team? We've got this approach as a company, but actually, how do we create a microculture for flexible working?
Right.
And that's my advice, to kind of enable the widespread adoption and acceleration of flexible working within a business of no matter what size. I believe you have to ask the teams what they want and need, because it will look different for everyone within that team, but also the team knows best what they need to deliver and how that can be done. So as I said, we start with stakeholder engagement. So what we had some challenges in the initial phase. The organisations I was working with when I first started piloting this approach a couple of years ago was that managers may not be totally on board because of any number of the reasons that we've touched on, or many others. So we start with stakeholder engagement and really go through the process, an overview of the process, and allow those stakeholders to feed into that process because they know their team. So to consult with them before you actually take the team through the charter design process is a really, really effective way of overcoming those objections at the source, reassuring people that actually their fears will not come to fruition, and if they do, we will work through them together, and this is how we're going to do that. It also takes into consideration, it just makes them feel heard. I always want them to feel respected and valued as part of the process. So for me, that's really fundamental, and I do the same at the end after the team have been through that process. And actually doing it virtually has been really, really effective. I actually prefer doing it virtually to in person. And the main reason for that is that when I've been delivering these in groups or in live workshops, you're often not there for all of the conversation, and people digress, and the content of the charter itself, because what you're asking to people is to have quite deep and open conversations which they may not be used to having, and the questions that we ask are not easy to answer because they require exploration of possibilities and deep thought and collaboration. And so it's helpful as a kind of, because your role, I guess, is kind of split in a way, because you are in a way coaching and supporting them to in out of respect for their expertise and understanding that they know best how to deliver their best work.
They know their business.
Yeah, you're supporting them to reach the right answers, but you are also there to broaden their horizon and challenge them as to what's possible based on, you know,
best practice,
my
really.
expertise and best practice and what other businesses
Sure.
are doing. So I need to be there, and my associates need to be there. And what we were finding in the live workshops is that if you kind of leave people to their own devices on tables, they have great discussions, but actually the outcomes
not much happens.
Well, it just wasn't quite as rich. And so when you deliver it virtually and get people into breakout spaces, if they're are big, you know, the group's big enough, the team's big enough,
and
then have an expert facilitator within each of those, you can navigate the discussion in a much more meaningful way. And as the facilitator, if you record the discussion, it becomes much more actionable.
And they can listen to it again, can't they, as well? And you could almost say, in a funny way, you could hold people accountable.
You can, much more so, because you are recording the outcomes of the conversation, but as the conversations are happening, you're also challenging them to go a bit deeper.
Do you
and you can't really do that.
Do you think people are more focused because it's virtual, potentially?
It really depends on the individual. That's a really interesting question, because some people are so fatigued, understandably.
They were zoomed out,
Yeah, they've been living on Microsoft Teams or Zoom or WebEx or whatever it is for the last
several months,
many months. And I think it's about striking that balance between the time that you're requiring them to be deep in thought and conversation, particularly if it's uncomfortable for some people to be open and to, you know, it's not something that not everybody's used to bringing their whole selves to work, are they? And
you've got to create a psychologically safe space where people feel that they can, and that it's okay to make mistakes, and you're going to be supported. And obviously we have quite a ways to go, I think, in terms of just training managers how to manage, as opposed to just kind of promoting them and then they kind of have to just figure it out. And you know, it's a bit unfair, really, because trying to kind of juggle, you know, their day job and learning to manage, and actually their job is to get the best out of those people, and they need support and help in order to do that.
And I have a huge amount of compassion for those managers, because you know, isn't fair. You know, the way you've just described that isn't fair, and actually it's a real privilege to support them and see them develop as you go through this process, because it's a living document. You know, I create it with them, and then I check in with them several weeks after we've done it, and then several months after we've done it, and we follow up with specific interventions. Like, it might be about trust, or it might be that, you know, through the team charter design process, we've identified that there's a bit of an issue with communication, or there's a bit of an issue with accountability. So I might sometimes I design follow-up workshops that, you know, tackle those issues at their root source and really kind of help them embed the learning from the team charter. You know, but going back to the how and the process of the team charter, it's the first step is to look at what our purpose is as a team. So we talked about purpose earlier. You know, I believe that every team should be aligned in its purpose and where it's going and what it needs to do. But also that conversation really aligns people, because people have very differing ideas of
what is the purpose, or they may not even know.
What are our outcomes, you know, because people often measure outcomes on activity rather than result. And I think you can have a very constructive conversation that does then lend itself to focusing on results and outcomes over activity worked. And so that's...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It just helps to feed into the whole conversation about flexible working, really. So it's just to start with the purpose conversation is really, really effective. And not a lot of teams have done that. It's really astounding to me that some teams don't have the answer.
Well, and I was having an interesting conversation with Paul Holbrook last week, and we were talking about the issue around how we look at this from a time aspect, in terms of actually getting to people to look at, you know, looking at the outcomes versus the activities. Because so often we have these activities and we just think, oh, well, the job description says I need to do these things, and actually they may not be value-added activities. It might not even be something that we need to do, or maybe we could just not do that activity, or outsource it, or automate it, or something like that. So I think, how easy or difficult do you think companies find it to get focused back on the outcome versus just like a to-do list in a job description?
Again, I think it comes back to that courage piece, because any sort of change requires courage, doesn't it? And I think if you have So if you have the support of the people who are at a senior level in the business, it makes all the difference, because you have that sense of empowerment and that sense of somebody's got your back if you want to change things and challenge things.
Yeah.
So I do think that leadership have an enormous responsibility to create a culture where it's safe for people to challenge ways of working. And there are so many organizations that don't have that safety.
Yeah.
So I think what I like to encourage people to do is to ally themselves with others and to create a movement for change in a very constructive, equitable way. How can we work in partnership with leadership to make this organization better, and approach it that, you know, you employ us to do better for this business and to, you know, to get the best of ourselves and to challenge each other. We need to do this in this way. Yeah, finding allies and people who are passionate about similar things and want to see the same changes is quite an effective strategy.
And I think it's also quite important that they sorry about that, that organizations are open to getting, you know, sort of fresh ideas and input from other organizations outside themselves, right? And I just wanted to touch on, because I know one of the things you did back in March was that you wrote a guide supporting businesses on how to actually make remote working. And I know obviously the Flexpo Business Digital Summit is next week, and it's a great opportunity to hear case studies and real life learnings and tips and hints from leading organizations out there that are making this work. I had an interview with Madeline Cole recently, who is the founder of Flexpo, and you know, the level of organizations that are making flexible work, you know, Twitter and Microsoft and Pricewaterhouse, I mean, household names that you go, hang on a minute, I know these companies. If they can make it work, surely we could all make it work. But I think we need to share kind of ideas and best practices. Tell us a little bit about, you know, Flexpo, and what are we going to be expecting there then?
So I'm so excited about Flexpo, and I think of all the things that I've done, or we've done, because it's been absolutely a team effort, but of all the things I've done in my career, this is one of the things I'm most proud of. Because I think if you'd said to me 2 years ago that, you know, I'd be in a position where I could help to create an agenda that is the sum total of every conversation I've ever had and Maddie's ever had and the rest of the team's ever had about flexibility, every question we've ever been asked about how to make it work, this is it. And it has been an absolute labour of love and a real passion project. And we have brought together a lineup of, I think Maddie and I included, it's 40 speakers.
Wow, that is fantastic.
A real cross section. Yeah, and it's free to attend as well. So for anyone in the HR or or, you know, anyone in the people space, so it's a day-long agenda of content, but it's all available for a month. So we're not under any illusion that everyone's going to sit and watch it for the whole day. But it's going to be a hell of a day, and you know, we're talking about the future of equality. So we have we wanted to have some challenging conversations. We've talked about this already. You know, I wanted to be thought-provoking, and I wanted to be challenging. I didn't want it to, you know, to be another echo chamber of agreement where everybody comes virtually and comes together and leaves thinking, yes, this is a good thing, we have to do this, and we all agree this is a great move. But actually I wanted it to be that, but I want people to find a community of others who feel very strongly about the movement for change and the reasons why we need to do it, and motivated to be part of it. Equally, I wanted to create a really diverse mix of perspectives and tackling of challenging issues that leave people with a toolkit of, well, here's what I can do. I want people to be inspired. I know they're going to be, because the content is extraordinary, the speakers are extraordinary, and yeah, we've got Aviva, we've got Adecco, we've got Financial Services Compensation Scheme, we've got Sir Robert McAlpine, we've got, you know, that's construction, we've got
I was going to say, Madeline was telling you about that.
Future of work.
Yeah. I mean, Madeline was telling me about how they were McAlpine was implementing flexible work with their construction workers. You know, that, no, I mean, how interesting is that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We've got Claire Campbell, the program director from Timewise, talking about implementing flexible working in frontline roles. So within the
Wow.
NHS, and Timewise have worked with a number of teaching, organisations and sectors that traditionally find it incredibly difficult to implement flexible working. But I do think that's a mindset thing, because I believe that every job is flexible. It's just that the options for flexible working will look different for every job depending on function. So once you kind of understand that and wrap your mind around it, actually it becomes a lot more simple, because then you have the conversation with people about what they want, and you come to an agreement about what that looks like.
Yeah.
And I realize I'm oversimplifying, but
No, and I mean,
at its core, that's what it's about.
Well, and I think it'd be fantastic to see a digital event, because I mean, that can be no small feat to have made a shift from an in-person to an online event. I mean, there's quite a lot that goes into making that an immersive and engaging experience for your for the attendees.
Yeah, I mean, it's all been led by Maddie. She's a phenomenal person to work with. We're great friends as well, which helps enormously. But yeah, she's amazing, and I'm very, very inspired by the attitude that she took at the start, which was, we can't do the live events this year. They were due to happen in May in the Midlands. So we took the brave move, she took the brave decision to cancel all the events for the rest of the year and pivot to digital, and did a hell of a lot of work to understand what to do and how to do it, and led us to this point. So in my role as designing the content, it's been made much easier because of the work that Maddie did, and because of the environment that she's created, where it is going to be as near as damn it to a live event. And that's always what we wanted to achieve. We wanted it to be really immersive, as you say, really interactive, and it's about as close as you can get. So there's so much interactivity, and I don't know if you've ever seen The Sims, the virtual reality. The Sims. So you sort of go in. Before the event opens, there's like this exhibition hall, which looks a bit like the Excel or something similar, and there's avatars walking around outside.
Oh, incredible!
You sort of swoop in when it opens, and the exhibition hall opens up, and there's stands that you can go into and talk to people and download their content and interact with them and ask them questions. There's an auditorium where all the content will be streamed on the day, and you can ask questions of our speakers live on the day. There's an Ask the Expert section, and there's lots of networking opportunities. And yeah, it's just, I'm so excited by it, and so privileged to be working on it. And yeah, it's going to be incredible.
Oh my goodness. I mean, are there any recent success stories of companies that have been implementing flexible work successfully that you think would, potentially would kind of incentivize people to want to find out more?
Well, at Flexpo.
Yes.
There's loads, yeah. So from all different sectors as well. So there's a case study. There's two case studies actually. One of the companies that I've been working with this year is Pfizer, the pharmaceutical business, and we've done the team charter. We've done a case study of the team charter process that we've implemented there. So I'm interviewing Dagmar Albers, who's the diversity and inclusion lead at Pfizer. We've also got a case study from Transport for London. So they have,
that will be fascinating.
Yeah, it's about how diverse senior hiring and implementing flexible working options has had an impact on employee well-being. So that is, that's just an extraordinary listen.
Oh my goodness.
But we've also got, in the panel discussions, we've asked everybody to keep it super practical. Yeah. So our speakers have been so generous in sharing the approach that they've taken, both from a leadership point of view, in terms of how it's managed. So we're not only talking about social issues like equality and inclusion and from an organisational perspective as well, we're also talking about the future of leadership and what that looks like. We're talking about the future of HR partnership and how HR can work with leaders and partner with leaders as we move beyond the pandemic to become, the role of HR is changing so much, isn't it? And we wanted to talk about what that looks like and how HR's role in the longer term embedding of a flexible working culture. We're also talking about the future of work itself and that blend that we were talking about, how do you manage that remote and in-person working options, and what about the democratization of work? What about the democratization?
What do you mean by that?
So how do people participate in ways that suits them?
Okay.
So for example, in one objection that I often hear in sales teams is that, we always get together in person to have these meetings once a week or once a day, however that looks. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The energy is amazing at these events, these meetings that we have, these huddles. We get results. Why would we change it? And And what you may find is that, everybody's different, aren't they? So, if you have some more introverted members of a team, they may prefer to participate remotely, even when, the question is, to me, why does everybody need to participate in the same way? We've got the technology that enables people to participate in different ways. So can we make that more democratic? And can we stop with the assumptions that everybody will participate in the same way? Because everybody's different. So it's all about personalisation and the employee experience. We'll be talking about that. Talking about how to look at which tasks are most appropriate for which environment. So how you
that I should think will be very interesting, because a lot of that's been kind of the sticking point. Because I'm sure obviously I've seen that you've seen on social media some of the recent articles from the government in terms of encouraging people to go back to work, and that work, there's the isolation issue, and that obviously not all tasks are suited to remote working. What do you say to that? Because that's a bit of a hot topic right now.
So I think the way it's been positioned is maddening. And I know a lot of people feel the same. And I put something on LinkedIn, I think it was last week, has been my post that's had the most engagement I've ever done on LinkedIn, because it is, as you say,
it's highly emotive, and you kind of think, if we've been working from home and we're proving that it worked, why is there this sudden push that we have to just suddenly go back again? Why can't we find the balance?
I think the frustration is that, and this is the way I led with what I wrote, was flexible working kept the working world going. And at the time in March, when lockdown happened and we were all instructed to pick up everything and go home, that was what kept the economy going, obviously among other things, but people's ability to react to that situation in a time of extraordinary uncertainty. And it weighed really heavily on lots of us, didn't it? What was happening? We all had to go through this really quick process of
adapting and changing,
a global pandemic, and that had a lot of, it made a lot of people psychologically feel very different for a while. And so it was maddening to me when that messaging came out that basically get back to work. Well, we never stopped working. The people
exactly.
Stopped.
Yeah. What do you mean?
I've worked harder, and I know that a lot of people have worked harder this time than ever, because it matters.
And they've had to juggle multiple things, especially when you've been parents and trying to juggle homeschooling. It's like, it's not obviously been a normal situation, has it?
That's a mild understatement, Chris.
Exactly. It's been a bloody nightmare if you've had kids. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Let's not call
not beat around the bush here. Yeah.
It's horrific. Yeah. So. Yes, I'm exhausted. But I think that was really frustrating, because it showed a real kind of lack of understanding of the magnitude of the situation, what it's meant for people, and what people have sacrificed, and what people have pulled out all the stops to do. But also a lack of learning and a lack of challenging ourselves to be better. And I think the other issue is that it felt like there's a priority, and it has felt to me, and this is just my personal view, obviously, there is more of a priority on economy than on health, and on what's best for mental health. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that I find quite difficult on a personal level to deal with. And somebody commented on the post, and it's actually, it summed it up perfectly for me. I'm not going to risk my life to save Pret. And that was just, it's true.
Well, yeah, it's true.
And I realise that it's difficult with the amount of office space, and there's a lot of conversations to be had. But this is an industrial revolution, isn't it? And
it's an opportunity.
I see it as an opportunity, and you see it as an opportunity, but also it's very complex, because the repercussions of an industrial revolution are so profound for so many people. And I'm not underestimating that at all. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't, find a balance and a blend moving forward. I'm absolutely for that. I think it was just the way that it's been positioned. There's no acknowledgement of how hard people have worked to keep things going. It doesn't capitalize on the opportunity that we have to do things better, and to work better, and to be better, and for people to feel and better in their minds and their bodies, and balance their lives better and deliver their best work. And I just think that's a shame.
Well, and don't you think also, I mean, given where we are, with COVID and how long it's gone on and the uncertainty, we've kind of reached a point where, there's that like initial surge of energy that kind of gets you through a big crisis like this. But the longer this uncertainty goes on, the harder it is to kind of keep going and not burn out. And so isn't it even more important now that we look at different ways of working and flexible working to support people in different working patterns so that we can maintain people's mental health, not have a mental health crisis? And also, to be honest, I mean, workforce is missing out on a very large pool of very highly skilled and talented people who want to contribute to the world of work, but are being denied that opportunity because we have very fixed and outdated ideas about the context in which they need to do that work.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that, there are some seriously inspiring stories out there of businesses who have done incredible things and I've had conversations with people who were staunchly against flexible working in all its forms before this, and now they've really changed their minds and they've really challenged themselves to think differently. So I think it's really important that we balance this conversation around the acknowledgement of, yes, we've still got a long way to go, and yes, the messaging from the government is disappointing, but actually in reality there are a lot of great things happening that wouldn't have happened otherwise. So we do need to be mindful of that. I think what's really interesting is that arguably the case for diversity has never ever been stronger, and so when we share those examples of, like we will at Flexpo Business next week, of opportunities that have arisen for more meaningful participation options in the workforce because of flexible working, and we can create a ripple effect of change. So organisations that haven't made changes yet or haven't gone far enough yet and are at the start of their path with this, will be inspired and will be led by what other businesses are doing. And I think that I've had a lot of people say the genie's out of the bottle, and I really do agree. I think people feel more empowered to ask for different things within workforces and enter into meaningful conversations with people in their businesses about what's possible. And also there's the humanization element that's happened to the workforce over the past few months that we cannot go back on. I'm sat here in my son's bedroom because my office is on a mezzanine level and doesn't have a door in my house. So you're seeing into that's his stickers that he got from school in his first year of school. So we have seen different aspects of people we haven't seen before.
It's humanized work, hasn't it? Because managers have been going into people's bedrooms and their kitchens and seeing their pets and their kids, and hopefully it's given people a much broader realization that these people are not just employees that turn up to the office. They have lives, and if people are able to live life outside, and it's sad that we even kind of make a separation between work and life, work-life balance, because you think, well, gosh, it almost implies that the work is something to be done and gotten over with so we can enjoy the life. And actually they should fit together. Our work should be part of a meaningful life, shouldn't it?
And that's my greatest hope for the outcome of this industrial revolution, is that ultimately we are people, and flexible working is all about people. This conversation is all about people, and we mustn't forget that this time has been incredibly difficult and traumatic for a lot of people in lots of different ways. It hasn't all been, well, I really want to I know there's been a lot of positives with the whole remote working experiment, which are undeniable and, really wonderful. And I've spoken to people that work in the city, that used to kind of go into London 5 days a week, that have, got to know their kids better, and their relationship is so much better, or they've got more sleep, or they've been able to be much fitter and they're feeling better than they have done in a long, long time. Drinking less because they're going out less after work, they feel better, they've got more money, there's all these kind of side benefits. Also, there are people that have really struggled with it, either from an isolation point of view. There's people I work with that have got, they've got a flat in central London with no outdoor space. They live on their own, or they live in a shared, younger people that live in shared accommodation where there isn't anywhere suitable for them to work, or they don't have the space. It's been actually physically quite uncomfortable and mentally very uncomfortable for them. So this is why I think it's so important that we all have a seat at the table, and we all get to contribute to the discussion in businesses about what happens next, because it isn't one size fits all, and we've always known that with flexible working. It is flexible, and it is about personalizing options and giving people a menu of options. And going back to the team charter process, it gives people the opportunity to communicate about that and some risk mitigation as well. Look at what do we do when things go wrong, and how do we overcome challenges, and how do we hold each other accountable, and what do we commit to each other as a team about how this is going to work moving forward. Which is why I feel like it's a really, really effective tool, not only because it overcomes a lot of the objections in the first place, but that it also helps create a strategy for the future, and so it's really sustainable. And I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that's incredible. And can I just ask, just to sort of pull this together, if you were to give advice to any sort of organizations, or particularly those line managers, on how they can just start to even consider how to make flexible working work in their business, what might you tell them?
Talk to your people, have a conversation with your team and ask them what they think, and and how you can engage in a conversation about how it might work. Because when you give people the opportunity to do that, that breeds trust. Trust is the thing that holds this whole conversation together. And if you talk to your people about what they want, that will reduce your fear of it being this unwieldy thing. And you can ask them, how will we manage that? What's best for us both in terms of how we communicate, the channels that we use, in terms of goal setting and how we measure your performance. Do you like me checking in with you every day? Does that help you? Or would you rather we had a check-in every week? Because the last thing I'd want is for you to feel like I'm checking up on you. And some managers check in every day. It seems like they're checking up on their people, or every few hours or whatever.
Yeah.
It seems like, and don't get me started on kind of tracking software and all that, because
spyware. Oh no, that's it. And there is that. There's just because they're sat at the desk doesn't mean that work is happening.
that is happening, and I'm sad that that's happening.
It's
but
quite distressing.
I think I can't change everybody's hearts and minds, and I think I've come to the realization that I need to work with the people who are open to different ways of working and different ways of thinking, and then others will come over time. So I have a conversation with them about how it could work, what it could look like, what communication looks like for them and for you, and find a way that works for your team and involve them in that process. You don't need to have all the answers as a manager, and I think that's something that really holds a lot of managers back, is they feel like they're this figure who needs to have it all figured out and needs to have all the answers. You don't. I don't believe that you do. I think some of the people I admire most are those people that are prepared to be vulnerable and say, I don't know. Let's work on this together. Let's work our way forward.
Yes, that's fantastic advice, and really I'd second that, to say also, you'd be surprised what kind of creative and clever solutions that your own people can come up with. Sorry, my voice is going at the moment.
Absolutely. And I think what's interesting is some of the most inspiring businesses that I've worked with in the last few years, they take a really, really wonderful and innovative approach to learning from their entry-level professionals. So there's a lot of intergenerational mentoring going on, and it's formal and informal. There's some people spending time as graduates with the CEO, and in a decade do this initiative where the CEO for a month, and they have a very junior person come in and shadow the CEO.
Wow.
And it's phenomenal, and there's really inspiring things like that happening. But also, I think because we have so many, we've got 5 generations in our workforce now, right?
Yeah.
We can all learn from each other.
Absolutely.
And I think that when businesses take the learning can come from, they listen to and they ask for learning from much younger people at the start of their careers, we can all be better, and we can all learn different ways of doing things. We can streamline things. It's not about having all the answers or giving all the answers. It's about working together and collaborating and learning, and I just think that is how you create that safe environment when it comes to starting to think about what flexible working might look like moving forward.
Yeah. Oh, and I love that you mentioned that about learning from people from all different perspectives and generations of workforce. You're right. That's where the richness and the diversity comes in. And also, really, as a manager, it's just, to be honest, my advice to a manager would be, you need to get really good at understanding people, your people, in terms of, how they like to be communicated with, their styles, how they like to work, how often do you need to kind of put those checkpoints in place, and, depending upon what sort of outcomes or projects that you've got, working that through with them so that, you don't just hand over work and kind of leave them to their own devices. You've come up with a plan that you both can achieve those objectives together. Oh, Ursula, this is so fantastic. I really, really appreciate all your wisdom and your insight this morning. If people want to know more about you, obviously I will put the links to the Flexpo Digital Summit in the post when I share the interview, and I will be attending myself, so I can't wait to see that.
Oh, wonderful.
But if people want to know more about you, or perhaps even if they think, I'm quite passionate about this flexible working movement, I'd like to get involved as well, where can they go?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so that might be the best place, I think. I'm just Ursula Tavendar, so hit me up on LinkedIn and let's start a conversation.
Okay, great. Okay, super stuff. All right, great. Well, listen, thank you again so much. And this again wraps up my next installment of the Making Flexible Work mini-series. And I will see you next week. Thank you so much, Ursula.
Thanks, Chris. It's been great.
Okay.